Welcome back to Art of MMA. This is Art of MMA Battleground, where me and Brandon go and fight to a subject till the end. We're going to do something a little bit different, see if you guys like it. If you do, we'll keep rolling with it. If not, maybe the original Art of MMA comes back next year. But for right now, me and Brandon are doing what we do. We're fighting. Of course, that's the mechanic, Brandon Catino. Welcome, Brandon. What's up, buddy?
Hey man, not much. Just getting ready for the Christmas holiday. Happy Hanukkah to all our followers out there that do celebrate. And yeah, man, it's good to be back. I missed your face a little bit.
A little bit. Today we're talking PFL and Bellator, the big merger. The thing we do on Battleground, like I said, we pick a subject, debate it till it's done. We're going to talk about PFL, we're going to talk about Bellator, and then what it means going forward for 2024 now that the merger is pretty much official. They've announced it anyway. There's some paperwork left to be done with Viacom and, of course, PFL and all the owners, Peter Murray, Dom Davis, all that stuff. But it's pretty much set in stone. Brandon, here's what we do know. So far, PFL is acquiring Bellator. They can call it a merger if they want, but PFL is in charge. Uh, they have basically announced the Champions Show for early 2024. A lot of fighters are already saying that show is in February. So we'll see if that's the date that pops up. They haven't not officially announced that date, but it's going to be pretty much all the champions against each other. And then going forward, they're going to keep the Bellator name around for a couple more years before finally fading it off into the sunset. I'm assuming once all the contracts are done, then they can kind of finally close it off. I don't see the point, but we'll talk about that later in the show. Brandon, let me start with you. First thoughts. When you we talked about this merger. Sorry, we talked about this merger going towards the end of our last couple episodes on Art of MMA, but it wasn't official then. Now that it's official, what are your first thoughts on the merger?
Man, to honest with you, I really don't know what is it that they're gonna do with all these fighters because they said how they were gonna have these PFL shows, these Bellator shows, but the amount of Bellator shows that they're going to have isn't enough to me for that Bellator roster because I think they said that they're only going to do 8 shows, and I think Bellator usually at least does at least maybe 12 to 13 shows, in 1 year. So it's just one of those things where it's just like to me you're not going to get the fighters enough fights.
Well, they did say even prior to this merger, Scott was saying they were going to reel back the amount of shows, right? Scott Coker, and in that process, we kind of assumed a lot of the fighters were going to then, walk away, be free agents, go UFC, PFL, wherever. Um, One thing they did do uh, is actually buy the entire roster, right? One thing PFL did with this whole thing was they wanted to guarantee they had the entire Bellator roster because a lot of fighters, AJ McKee, Pitbull, a lot of them were talking about like, okay, well, this merger goes through, we're basically going to be free agents and go to the UFC or go do wherever. And what they did was basically guarantee they had all that entire roster. What it does do, I believe, is make them the clear cut, obvious number two promotion in America. They're still not even, I wouldn't even put them in the same universe as the UFC at this point because of the amount of pure money that flows through the UFC, TKO, obviously now with their merger with WWE and everything else, the way they're going global. I find the ironic part of everything is that PFL has got Saudi money kind of coming in, right? They had that big investment from the Saudi investment firm, but now UFC is also running shows in Saudi Arabia because of the deals with Vince McMahon and TKO. So that's going to be kind of a conflict. Another conflict is that we thought PFL was leaving ESPN. They're not. They just re-upped to a big deal on ESPN, which makes me wonder if UFC is going to move to a different provider because they were never really happy having PFL on the same network as them to begin with. So we'll see what's happening with that. WWE is currently shopping all their television deals. I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC might be doing the same, but I also don't know where else they could go that would be a bigger provider than ESPN that they're using for. Uh, Brandon, one other thing we know is that there's going to be a big champion show come February. the season tournament winners from 2023, the Larissa Pacheco's, the Henan Ferreras, uh, Magomed Kamirov, all those are going to be fighting the current champions from Bellator. Uh, what are some of those matchups you're kind of excited for?
I mean, you know me, man. I'm always down to watch my girl Chris Cyborg do some work. I mean, her Larissa
Let me
Pacheco.
ask you about that real quick. Cyborg and Kayla has been the fight we've talked about forever until Kayla lost to Larissa. And now they're talking about doing Cyborg and Larissa first. Is that a
Yep.
mistake? Like, should they just get this Kayla fight? Because neither fighter is getting younger.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, that is the fight that everybody wants is is Cyborg and Kayla. So I mean, that would be the fight that everybody would want. But I mean, hey, it was Don Davis? He said like we said we were going to do champions versus champions, and Larissa's the champion. So, but either way, I think the winner of that fight is going to fight Kayla. So Kayla is just going to be waiting anyway for either one of them. I mean, either way, somebody
That
was going
sucks
to
for
be
her because she's been waiting this whole time anyway.
yeah. So I mean, either way, somebody was going to be waiting, because I think if you did Cyborg and Kayla, Larissa would have been waiting, and you do Cyborg and Larissa, Kayla's waiting. I mean, the only person that isn't waiting is Cyborg because she's fighting one of the two right off the bat.
And she's got a boxing fight coming up too.
Yep.
But yeah, back to some of these champions you're looking forward to fighting.
Yeah, I mean, besides that one, probably also too looking forward to the welterweight one, man, with Damon Jackson, man. He got that
Jason
upset
Jackson.
win. Isn't it? Wait,
Jason
what did I
Jackson.
say?
You said Damon. You said Mr. Guillotine, Damon Jackson.
You're right, I did. My bad.
We love
My
you,
bad.
Damon, but not this episode.
Yeah. Oh, but no, but I'm looking for that one, man. That one should be good. And then of course the featherweight one, with Pitbull and everything like that. Featherweights, they always deliver. So I mean, that should be a good one as well.
Yeah, one thing we probably won't see is Alban Mercier. He retired after his last one. He said he would. He since said he would like see what the picture is. Like he'll wait and see. He's just kind of tired of fighting and kind of wants to walk away. So we'll see what happens with him because obviously there's some exciting fights at 155. Obviously Larissa or Kayla versus Cyborg is an exciting fight. Henan Ferreira versus Ryan Bader actually is a very exciting fight for me. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this mega card come probably February. The only thing I would say about having Kayla instead of Larissa is that Larissa just fought like 4 times this year, and Kayla fought once. And February is a quick turnaround from November for a big fight like Larissa versus Cyborg. Maybe give Larissa a few months off to kind of relax where Kayla's fresh. And then Cyborg could fight, and then Larissa gets the winner of that. One thing I think they made pretty clear through kind of just hinting here and there, at least a clear picture for me, is that there's going to be a lot of crossover on some of these upcoming events, especially with not just the Bellator cards, but the PFL Super Pay-Per-View cards, right? With the Francis Ngannous and the Jake Pauls and a lot of these fighters they're bringing in just for that. Amanda Serrano, we're talking about boxing crossing over to MMA. She's going to be on the Supercard series for MMA. There's a lot of unknown questions when it comes to that pay-per-view model because they've hyped it, but we haven't seen it yet, right? We've seen it for the champions. We've seen it for the championship show every year, but we haven't seen what it looks like as just a super card, right? We still don't know who Francis is going to fight. We still don't know who they're bringing in for this and that. Obviously, Henan Ferreira, he might be tied up with Ryan Bader, but he also called out Francis Ngannou because he wants that huge payday. And that's a lot of questions to be asked. What are your thoughts on that super pay-per-view, and what do you think we're going to see from that?
Yeah, I mean, even the guy who won the light heavyweight tournament, he even called out Francis. He thought that would be a good thing, for two African fighters going after it. I mean, really though. I mean, to me, besides the title fights, I mean, maybe you might do like a PFL, like a regular PFL fighter versus a Bellator fighter. Like, say for instance, maybe like you could get a AJ McKee versus a Clay Collard or a Shane Burgos. two bangers, just going at it right there. So I mean that's what I could think it being. I don't think you would probably see a Bellator fighter versus another Bellator fighter, or a PFL fighter versus another PFL fighter. It would be probably you just keep it like how it is, how that show is, saying it's a super card. It's basically Bellator versus PFL, and probably that's what the undercard will be, is those type of fights.
Yeah, especially when you look at PFL's welterweights, right? Like they're so deep. You're talking about Sadibou Sai. You're talking about a returning Ray Cooper. You're talking about your boy Solomon Renfro, who moved up in weight. Carlos Leal. Like they're very deep. And of course, the champion Magomed Kamirov. They're very deep at that division. Of course, Bellator is a little bit deeper at middleweight, right? With the Johnny Eblins and the Gegard Mousasi's and some of the other divisions. So there's divisions that don't really match up, that they don't have a champion versus champion matchup for, which I would kind of want to see how that kind of works out, because you know PFL only picks and chooses certain weight divisions for the season. Up until this year, they were doing the 155-pound women. Now they're doing the featherweights, which makes more sense because there's a lot more featherweight women fighters than there are the bigger ones. Uh, and then they've never really spent a lot of time like on. I don't even remember they've ever had a middleweight, have they?
They did, yeah, they did. I think the
For at
first
least
two
three
seasons they
seasons.
did,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's where was it I want to say it was David Branch. David Branch, I think he was their middleweight champion and he was their light heavyweight champion. He was back as a double champion, I think, for them or
I thought
something
that was
like
World
that.
Series of Fighting. I
Maybe it
thought he
was.
was the
I
double
mean,
champ at
no,
World
you're right.
Series.
I think he was double champ by World Series, but I think in the beginning though, but at least like I know the first season they definitely did have a middleweight division, and then I know they went away from it. But
Yeah.
I know coming back with this, I know that I think they're still not doing a bantamweight tournament. So what are you going to do with all those bantamweight fighters from Bellator?
Patchy mix.
And again, too, I don't think they are doing a middleweight tournament as well. I think they're still keeping their same divisions that they do for the PFL tournament. So again, if you're doing 8 Bellator shows, you got all these. I mean, again, I don't know how big the bantamweight roster is, but
You
what
also
are you
got to
gonna do with
remember
the
Bellator's finishing off their Grand Prix too.
yeah. So again, but what are you doing with those what are you doing with those bantamweight fighters? What are you doing with those middleweight fighters? And your boy Ray Cooper, he wants to fight at middleweight. That's the reason why he
First
was
of all,
out.
your boy. That's your
Nah,
boy.
yeah, and that's the reason why he didn't fight this whole year, because he was like, yo, I'm not cutting down to 170. I want to fight at 185. That's why his fight on the pay per view what was at 185, because that's where he
I
wants to
thought he
fight at.
was under contract dispute earlier the year. I thought that
I
was why
mean,
he didn't.
you can call that a contract dispute because of the weight that he wanted to fight at. Maybe he didn't like the weight on his contract, but I know that's one of the things. Like I think he didn't want to cut
I
down to
don't like him
170.
in 185. I don't think he's big enough for it personally. I think he's a small 170. To be honest with you, because of his height and his reach and everything, he's not a big, tall guy. Um, but who knows with that. One thing I will say, when it comes to the bantamweights, especially for Bellator, they got such a deep roster of bantamweights, from obviously the champion Patchy Mix, former champion Sergio Pettis, Hiraguchi, who actually wants to go down to flyweight. You got Archuleta, former champion. They got a number of fights for Patchy, and Patchy actually wants Archuleta next because he wants to avenge his only loss. So that makes sense for Patchy Mix right now, at least for the first year. Let's focus on maybe a rematch with Sergio. You also got Stotts there. You got Sabatella there, and then you got Archuleta. So there's a few fights to make for Patchy Mix this year. We'll see how that works out going forward for next year. Um, Bellator has to finish off their lightweight Grand Prix they just started. Uh, AJ, your boy AJ McKee volunteered to step up if somebody can't make it because he wants to get back in. Um, so there's a lot of, I think what Bellator is going to focus on is their Grand Prix and maybe a few big cards during the year until this whole thing gets sorted out, because we know they have to finish up their Showtime deal, even though Showtime's getting rid of basically sports, right?
Yeah, but
Definitely combat sports.
I want to say the last show, the one November 17th, that was their last fight on Showtime. So their deal with Showtime is up. They're done. Which speaking of, I think is another thing with PFL is, yes, I think PFL is going to be on ESPN, but I think they're still working on a deal for Bellator to go elsewhere. So I think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to have it on multiple networks or the multiple streaming services.
Well, the ironic thing is that Viacom still owns part of Bellator, right? PFL didn't buy it 100%. They bought majority control. So Viacom still has money in it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it show up, especially if they're going to do special events, right? Maybe on a CBS or maybe a Paramount Plus or something along those lines. It's ironic that the number three promotion bought the number two promotion, um, and yet the number three promotion is the one in control. We don't really see that too often. Um, One thing I'd like to talk about real quick before we kind of go into what we will see next, which we've kind of already done, uh, but is looking at the history of both these promotions, right? We look at PFL, who, even though it was a new promotion, kind of piggybacked off World Series of Fighting, piggybacked off Ray Cefo's original promotion. That had some conflict. So Dom Davis comes in. He wants to start a promotion. He brings Ray and some of those executives over, obviously minus dominance's Ali Abdulaziz. Uh, Kept him out of it this time, even though he is still very influential in that promotion, whether you know it or not. You see a lot of his fighters kind of towards the top of the roster. Um, and then you look at Bellator, who has a longer history. John Repney and then Scott Coker taking over and kind of revolutionize or not revolutionizing, re-energizing that promotion. Um, when you looked at this maybe a year or two ago or a year ago when the rumors started flying, did you even think this was possible?
I mean, yeah. I mean, dude, like PFL has money, like gets money out the wazoo. Like they always have investors. You always see them doing stuff like Wiz Khalifa because he's one of their investors. Saying they have actors, they have athletes. People like for some reason every year they're always able to get money just coming in from investors. So
Dom
I mean,
Davis. I'll tell
you
you
know,
why. Dom Davis. He's a
yeah,
capital investment hedge fund manager that has, he's right in there in Great Falls, Virginia, right outside DC. He has every connection politically and every connection like Hollywood wise.
yeah. So I'm saying, so like they're able to get money, but like say like Viacom was, Viacom the network really kind of wasn't doing much really with Bellator. I feel like they didn't really know what to do. Like they probably maybe wasn't even listening to Scott Coker maybe about some things, and they just kind of just let it be. And then saying that's why to me PFL was able to kind of take over.
Yeah, I want to see so many changes coming up with both promotions, to be honest with you. I think PFL tries to be so cutting edge with everything they do. And they have been from the day one, right? Like the smart cage, trying to make it more sports science, trying to make it more uh, show people like the technology side of MMA, right? They sit there and they focus on uh, everything from the punch speed, the kick speed. Uh, they do everything about that, but they've had, one thing I will say is Bellator was kind of famous for this early on, but not lately. PFL has a lot of shady stuff they do with some of their decisions. And I think going forward, they're going to need to be a lot more transparent with some of the stuff they do, being this big of a promotion. You saw the UFC try to get away with it for a long time, and people call them out on their BS now because everybody sees everything they do. When you got a promotion that big, you can't have a Henan Ferreira and a Fabricio Verdum decision get overturned to a no contest. You can't have suspensions kind of get brushed under the rug because you want to use a fighter who happened to be suspended. You know, uh, they got called out for it this year with all those suspensions from Bruno to a number of their top fighters getting suspended for the season. But have we heard how long they're suspended for? No, they've kept it all quiet. We assume most of those guys will be back next year, especially Bruno Caballero. Like, so they're going to have to clean up that side of things. As far as Bellator goes, I don't know. Have you heard what's going to happen to Scott Coker? Is he just going to stick around to the end of it, or is he become an executive with PFL? What happens to Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think those guys have really kind of said anything. Like, I think was it Mike Hogan? I think was joking around saying like talk about filling out a resume and everything like that. So I really don't know if Scott Coker is going to stay on. But I think Don Davis did say that he did offer all of those guys jobs, but I guess maybe they haven't taken them yet.
I mean, when you come to Scott, Scott's got so many options, right? The guy has such a lengthy resume from K1 all the way through Strikeforce. Obviously, got bought by the UFC. Now Bellator got bought by PFL. He's a guy you bring in to really boost a promotion, and Brandon will get a kick out of this. I wouldn't be upset to see him hop on Karate Combat uh, and help Karate Combat out, especially when they got that big show coming up with Pettis and Henderson this weekend. Uh, but there's a lot going on that we don't know the answers to yet. And come 2024, we're going to get 8 Bellator shows. We're going to get all our PFL season. And then we're going to get mega pay-per-views kind of sprinkled in here and there that we don't know more details about, but we know that PFL spent a ton of money on already. Uh, let's talk about that pay-per-view system, right? All right, so Francis Ngannou, we know he obviously just had that very competitive fight with Tyson Fury. Personally, I don't think he got robbed. I just think it was a very close fight. Uh, but he definitely showed everybody he could box. Um, and then you got Jake Paul, right? Those are the two big names headlining this pay per view division. You have obviously fighters like Kayla and Cyborg and everybody else they can throw on for big buys. Uh, Other than the first show we know is going to be the champions versus champions, when do you think we see Francis Ngannou? And do you think we're going to see Jake Paul, or is he going to keep just boxing? I know he
I
said he's
want to say
going
we are.
to.
I think according with Jake Paul, I think they put a smart cage in his gym, so
Oh,
that
he's
way
been
he
doing
can.
MMA, but
Yeah,
whether he actually does it, I don't know.
yeah. So I mean, I want to say after this fight that he has, this coming week. I want to say that I think that's when he's going to transition to MMA because I want to say that Jake Paul, and Francis, I think we're supposed to be on the first pay per view, in 2024. So I mean, I don't know if they're going to be a part of this, PFL versus Bellator, fight pay per view, and get those guys, just some one off fights or what? Because I mean, I think also too, like word is like, I mean, you could have somebody from Bellator that might want to fight Francis. Like, hey, I mean, hey, I know he's old and everything, but yo, the darkness is still around, man. Cheick Kongo versus Francis Ngannou,
He's not
hey,
retired yet.
I
Oh
don't
my
think
god!
so. Hey, France and France, African descent right there. Yo, I mean, it could be something.
I'm worried about Francis Ngannou for this point of view. He's been out of MMA now. By the time he fights, what, 2 years? He
I
did
think
the
it was
boxing.
2020. I think it was 20. No, it was 2022, January
He
2022.
finished out his contract in 2022. Um, and then this year he hasn't fought at all because he was recovering first from the double knee surgery. And then you're talking 2024 is knocking on the door. He hasn't fought MMA in 2 years.
Yep,
And he's not
years.
getting any younger. So by the time he gets in that cage at some point, you're talking about 2 years, 2.5 years. You're going to have to get him in there sooner than later. And there's already talks of him doing another boxing fight, whether it's a rematch with Tyson, whether it's the winner of one of these either Joshua or Wilder fights, because Deontay Wilder's already said he'll do a boxing fight and an MMA fight. He's all about it. Um, that fight just didn't come to fruition because they finally got the deal done with Tyson Fury, which was the money fight that he wanted to begin with. So obviously he's going to take that one first. Jake Paul's been hinting at MMA, and I'll tell you, a lot of people don't know this, and I'm sure you do because we've talked about it. But Jake Paul was a high school wrestler. Jake Paul was actually a pretty successful high school wrestler. Him and Logan were both very good wrestlers in Cleveland, Cleveland, Ohio, in high school. Now, high school versus the pros, it's a big difference. But when you come up with that kind of background of being a wrestler your whole life and football and other athleticism, don't sleep on Jake Paul getting inside an MMA cage. Even Jake said he might be more successful at MMA than he was at boxing. People joke around because Nate Diaz did a takedown and tried to put him in a guillotine and stuff. It's different when you're boxing. You don't think that's going to actually happen in the ring. You're expecting to throw punches. You're not expecting somebody to try to pull guard on you. Um, so from that point of view, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jake Paul fight MMA soon. I know he's got that one more boxing fight lined up. Him and Nate Diaz are going back and forth. I think it's a lot
But
of talk
Diaz,
for me.
Diaz says he won't fight in the PFL. So
Yeah, and he keeps thinking he has options in the UFC, which he doesn't. People forget that he basically limped his ass out of the UFC, right? He had that one mercy fight against Tony Ferguson. Uh, Other than that, he basically, which is because that whole card fell apart with Hamzat and everything else, which is even the reason he got that. Otherwise, Hamzat would have just murdered him. uh, but he just kind of limped his way out of that. And now all of a sudden he thinks, well, I'll go home to UFC and I'll be a champion. Look, I don't know how much weed that Nate Diaz smokes, but that's never going to happen. Like he's
he got
even if he
that.
does, go ahead.
I was gonna say he still has that McGregor Diaz 3. You know, that's what
Look,
everybody
even if
still
he
wants to
does,
see that fight.
yeah, even if he does go back to the UFC, it's never going to be for a title. Like you can forget that. Would they bring him back for a one-off fight with Conor? Yeah, I could see that. Would they bring him back for a one-off fight here and there, like they did bring back Nick like a couple years ago or last year or whatever it was? Yeah, sure. UFC 300 is coming up. They want to stack that card. I could see for a one-off fight. But you think you're going to go back and resume your career like nothing happened? No, you stumbled your way out of the UFC. PFL is your best bet because they actually want to pay you because they want to see you and Jake Paul talk a lot of shit and sell a lot of pay-per-views. Like that's the only reason anybody is interested in Nate Diaz is to sell pay-per-views because they know he's going to run his mouth and he's going to bring his entourage and there's going to be a lot of fireworks and Jake's going to bring his entourage and there'll be a lot of fireworks and at the end of the day, it's like Jersey Shore, right? Like everybody wants to watch the train wreck, whether it's entertaining television or not, or great television or not. People want to watch a train wreck. From Francis Ngannou's point of view, he wants his opponent to make as much money as he does. So for him, you have to find an opponent that's on that level. And we thought maybe Derek Lewis, who was a free agent for a second, would be the guy. Maybe we get that rematch. Not that anybody ever wants to see that rematch, but we get that rematch because of name value. But Derek re-upped with the UFC. They threw a lot of money at him to keep him there. So the options are limited. But I will say this: you could sell a pay-per-view with Francis Ngannou and Ryan Bader. You could definitely sell a pay-per-view with Francis Ngannou and Renan Ferreira because Renan Ferreira has been building himself up as a monster this season, and he looks like a legitimate. I don't think Impa versus Francis is a sellable pay-per-view. Maybe, I mean, I know he just won the season, like you said, at 205. Maybe if he gets a few more wins, maybe a heavyweight win, but it's kind of hard to book a smaller heavyweight, even if he does go up to heavyweight, versus a 265-pound heavyweight like Francis Ngannou. I personally don't see that. Would you want to see that?
I'm Hey man, you never know, man. I mean, you go to that Cain Velasquez mode, where they're lighter, faster, heavyweights, like a Cyril Gane, But I mean, I was just throwing it out there. I mean, I don't really know if we will see that fight, but I just know he said that's the fight he would want to see. But I think it's one of those things where he would want to do it, but he'd probably want to do it, back in like Africa or something like that. Whenever they get that set up.
Yeah, he's been behind the scenes. He's working as an ambassador slash consultant for Africa. So that's something that Francis is definitely passionate about. Look, PFL, we talk a lot about some of the mistakes they've made throughout the years, but they've also done a great job of growing very fast, going straight uphill. And they have global connections too. They're not just an American promotion. They're looking to go to Africa. They obviously had the PFL Europe season this year, which just finished off. And a lot of those fighters are going to be fighting super fights next year as Europe versus America and some of those other things for some of the fighters that may not be in the season coming up because you have a lot of fighters. We talked about Magomed Kamirov. He's been in the season every year. Maybe he just wants to do like pay-per-view fights now.
Yeah. I mean that's another thing too, man. I mean, you're getting in all these fighters. So like, I mean, I'm sure not all of them because that's why he said, oh, that's why I think Bellator would be good for some fighters. Like he brought up like an Anthony Pettis because he was saying like, yo, and like just him being an older fighter, maybe the tournament isn't for him. But if he wants to fight a couple of times a year, Bellator is the way to go for him. But I'm just saying you have all these fighters that are young and up and coming that maybe they do want to get in on this tournament. But now you have so many people that means you either have to expand the tournament or just some people aren't going to be able to get in the tournament.
I'll tell you one and let me finish this show off by asking about a couple super fights you might want to see going forward. I'll start it off. Uh, One fight I would love to see, and I don't know if he would go up in weight for it, but we also know the other guy can come down. I would love to see Bubba Jenkins versus AJ McKee because I think the hype for that fight would be so entertaining that and you know the fight would deliver because both guys bring fireworks. Like just and both can wrestle, both can strike, both can do just a little bit of everything. Uh, and obviously Bubba has unfinished business with Chris Wade because that third fight didn't happen because of Wade coming in slightly overweight. Um,
Yeah.
and that bad blood that goes with that. But I would love to see Bubba versus AJ McKee. And another one I really would love to see is Jason Jackson and Magomed Kamirov because I think Jason Jackson has done such a great job the last year or two. Just his stock is just rising so fast. What are some of the dream fights you want to see so far with the current rosters?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I kind of already said them earlier, but like I said, I mean, I'm down to see AJ McKee versus Clay Collard or AJ Key, versus my boy Shane Burgos. I think that would be instant action right there. I mean, it's kind of hard, like I said, with them not having a bantamweight division, but I mean, you see somebody like like a actually, you know what? Like, no, you know what I would like to see? I mean, if he could make the weight, but I know Douglas Lima has gone up, but I mean, a Douglas Lima versus a Ray Cooper, at 185 or maybe 170, that I think that could be a banger of a fight right there. Also too, of course, Kayla Cyborg nonsense, my girl Cyborg, hopefully they'll smash her real quick. We'll have to worry about hearing about this ever again. But yeah, but those are really kind of the main ones. Like, I think a
New
Douglas
show
Lima.
title, same Kayla Hate.
But that's it. I think those are really like the fights I would like to see if
Let
possible.
me ask you one name because we talked about Impa wanting to fight Francis, but that ignores one of the very best light heavyweights on the planet, and Vadim Nemkov. Like, what happens to Vadim? Like, he's not going to sit there and keep waiting,
I
and he
mean, Vadim
doesn't.
Nim- I mean, Vadim Nemkov. He's even talking about moving up to heavyweight. So I mean, he could be a guy who could fight Francis.
And,
He's even talking about moving up to heavyweight.
one more dream fight. Uh, is there any chance that somehow, with all this merger and all the money coming in, do we see a Francis versus Fedor
Yeah.
to
Man,
sell pay per views?
I think Fedor is done. I think he's retired. He said that I think he just wanted his fight with Ryan Bader, and that was it.
And selfishly, also, I don't know what to see from Amanda Serrano. I don't know. She hasn't done MMA in a couple years. She's been so active boxing, but she does. She is like 3-0 in MMA. She does have the background doing
Yep.
all different sports, and she is a very talented MMA fighter from everybody that's reported on her.
Yep.
But there's a women's flyweight champion named Liz Carmouche, who's a very strong veteran, who's been putting people away. I wouldn't mind seeing Amanda test her skills against Liz Carmouche.
Yeah.
I mean, Liz is running out of opponents to go through. So
Yeah. I mean, also too, man, going back on the Fedor thing, I was saying, do we even see Fedor if Scott Coker's not involved?
that's fair. But we also seen Fedor in Elite XC, Affliction, like everywhere there's a paycheck not named UFC. I mean, that's the only thing we never seen him in, which was the UFC. And he had negotiations with Dana. He came away saying, I don't like the way Dana operates, mainly because guess what? He wanted M1 Promotions to have a co-billing with UFC on a Fedor card, and Dana was like, "Hell no! Like we're the UFC, we're the bigger, if you want to do this, it's UFC or nothing." And Fedor walked away because he wanted his promotion company to get top billing. If you noticed, every Bellator card that had Fedor on it, M1 Promotions was mentioned. Every single one, even if it was at the bottom of the card or the bottom of the poster, M1 Promotions was there. Uh, that is Fedor's baby. And especially, I think you even see it when Nemkov fights, if I'm not mistaken, as one of his guys. So Fedor is all about his business at this point, and I would never say never. Matt Brown said this recently: a fighter's never retired. I would never say never because we saw Randy Couture at almost 50 years old coming back and fighting. It's just that itch you get. I'm sure I could talk trash to Brandon 10 years from now and he'd still be like, all right, I'm going to kick your ass. So, it is what it is. He's still ducking me in professional wrestling, but that's a different subject. Before we get out of here, Brandon, I want to ask the audience to make sure you leave a comment. Let us know if you like the new format, one subject, and we're done. Quick hitters, we can continue with more episodes. Brandon and I can record a few episodes and release them more frequently if you really like this format. It did pretty well a couple years ago when we did Battleground. So let's see how that comes about. We had a lot more stuff to talk about. I think we're off. Well, we're off for Christmas, but we'll be back after Christmas as well, and really get going in 2024. So let us know if that's something you like. And lastly, shout out to Robert Verascio. He's got a fight at CFFC 128 this weekend. Of course, FightersFirst.shop. You can get the Mechanic Collection. You can get the Ruthless Collection. He's fighting this weekend, trying to stay undefeated. So tune in to CFFC 128 on Friday night, December 15th, to watch him continue his undefeated ways. Brandon, any final words?
Yeah, now, guys, like Mike said, man, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think of this format, and let us know what you want to see us talk about.
All right, sounds good. This is Art of MMA Battleground Edition, episode 1, brand new series. So check out that playlist on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and like everything, and leave a comment. For Brandon the Mechanic Catino, I'm Mike Yin. This is Art of MMA, and we're out.